This is Cleveland's Franklin Castle. They say it's the most haunted building in the city. I wouldn't know. I haven't been inside in many years because they charge $40 a tour, and so I can't speak to its ghost quotient. This castle, like all castles, gains its ability to charge fees because of tradition. The tradition for Franklin Castle is that there are ghosts inside. But a medieval castle's tradition would be enough to levy taxes, request corvée labor, or even raise levies. And it would get this tradition because the person who controlled the castle controlled a fief, or a feudum.
Tradition is not neutral. It doesn't appear out of nothing. Tradition is contingent. It depends on something else. Traditions are knowledge created with a purpose. In feudom, tradition is paramount. We're not here to talk about Michel Foucault. We're here to talk about feudom, the nation of knights and priestesses from the Warcrow universe. Feudom is a kingdom on the rise, and they all have faith that it is true. They believe that they're the heirs to the two moon goddesses, Celes and Losna. This deep conviction is the very bones of feudom society. Blessed by goddesses and fate, Feudom's leaders know that they will soon be the greatest nation in Lindworm, and that they'll save the world from what ails it. There are many races and cultures in Lindworm, but there used to be more. The vanished people are the Asters, and before they left, they created humans and elves from the Varank, using their total and absolute mastery of magic. But when they departed, the peoples of Lindworm expanded and migrated. Humans split into countless tribes, many far to the west, the future Maghar and hegemony of Embersieg. To the south, the people of Osman. The most central were the Wida. The Wida lived on both sides of the Isthmus of High Tide and the northern coast of the sea. They were a simple but martial people, and that's exactly what the elves were looking for. More than 1,000 years ago, there was a great elven civil war that brought down the empire of Gaeasael. On one side were the Radiant Elves, who knew that magic needed to be used with respect and dignity. On the other were the Dark-Minded, who saw such rules as restraints on their being. The Dark-Minded Elves came to the poor and simple Wida and told them to fight for them or die, ideally both. Those who refused to follow the elven general Naelia were put to the sword. The rest were forced to fight in an unimaginable war. The Wida were one of the few human groups to survive the cataclysm, but it taught them many painful but valuable lessons. They learned how to fight and how to organize. They learned to be sappers, diggers, and warriors. They learned that elves were just mortal beings, not really superior, not special, and that elves had fallen out of favor with Wida's beloved moon goddesses. The animosity remains strong to this day. Wida believed that the Cyanon elves come to town to steal babies and curse the locals. Some families wouldn't even name the children until they could speak, so fearful they were of losing the infants to elven predations. Some families still hang cold iron charms to keep away the Cyanon. But back then, the remaining elves spread and fled, and the world crumbled. The entire island of Gaeasael was covered in the fog. Time passed. The Maghar tribes, ancestors of the hegemony, migrated here from the west. They were fleeing some enemy, and were all anointed by an ancient king. They were also aggressive. The Maghar and Wida would become very well acquainted over the years. The Wida destroyed one of their tribes, the Ond, and beat back the others. Surrounded by foreign humans and unfriendly elves, the Wida prayed for salvation. And their prayers were answered. Portions of the fog over Gaeasael blew away. The red mist parted, and across the Isthmus of High Tide, the Wida could once again resettle the rich lands of their ancestors. This was a miracle. They knew in that moment that the twin moon goddesses were their patrons, that they were the chosen people, and they would remember this forevermore. Making the sign of the goddesses, they returned to Levinas under King Clodomir. His daughter, Honorine, would further expand and explore their holdings on the island until she was overthrown by her constable, Aaron. Aaron's other main contributions were what he salvaged and what he birthed. From Arona Lagoon, the usurper found Conquerbera, a mighty blade with 2 dog heads on the hilt. He died not long after. Legends say he killed himself with his own sword, one which would end the life of any who did not deserve it. But his son, Adoward, rose to power. Adoward's armorer placed his father's sword in his hands, and Adoward felt something stir. He swore that he would do whatever it took to be the bearer of Conquerbera, and he succeeded. After all, Adoward founded the kingdom now known as Feudom. He united the Wida, and King Adoward took to the field and was responsible for feats celebrated by troubadours and bards even today. The Battle of the Burning Pass, the defense of the River Alba, the conquest of Os Marcos. That last one took 8 long years, and he came to know the lands of Os Marcos very well. He attacked the pastoral dwarves of Mount Haven, assaulting the town of Wimara and pushing deep into dwarven territory. This was done to give the new kingdom a strong negotiation place, rather than out of bloodthirst or a goal of endless conquest. Adoward signed the Treaty of the Cauldron with the dwarves of Mount Haven. The dwarves and their queen Liuva ceded the coastal strip of the World's End and Aurora to Feudom in exchange for peace and a mutual defensive pact. This pact lasted for nearly 1,000 years, until recently that is, but we'll come back to that. When he was done, Adoward founded Mugas and built the first great basilica to the goddess Losna. He divided his conquered lands amongst his best generals, declaring each of them a duke and giving them counts and their counties as subjects. In essence, he created feudalism. This is a real-world concept you've probably heard about, said out loud, or researched in Sid Meier's Civilization. Medieval kingdoms didn't possess the same armies or bureaucracies of modern nation-states. Feudom is no exception. You see, feudalism is a historical term that historians use to describe the very decentralized socio-political system of Europe from, like, the 800s through the 1400s, give or take. Feudalism means that instead of a solid nation-state with a constitution and national laws and identity, all control is based around relationships. Feudum is Latin for fief. A fief is some kind of thing, usually land, that a lord gives to a lower vassal. In exchange for this land, they demand military service and other forms of support. This is how it goes all the way up and all the way down. Counts in charge of counties are given their right to rule by their boss like a duke. And in turn, those counts give out smaller grants of land or title to those in their domain. At the bottom are peasants and or serfs, who do the same thing, kind of. They're granted protection and some degree of land in exchange for working that land and providing taxes, usually in the form of goods. Now, as a historian, it's not so clean. What I just gave you was the Crusader King's explanation. Moderns understand things one way, but medieval people didn't see it like that. We can't just impose this easy, structured framework onto our real-world history, though we can do so in the world of Lindworm. Like, I'm sure that feudom, much like our world, has endless exceptions. The actual relationship between lords and vassals fluctuated wildly with the time and place. Spots like Italy, Scandinavia, and Ireland, none of them fit the model very well, but we can still play them in video games and pretend that they're the perfect model of feudalism. The focus that most pop historians give to landholding and military service also neglects how important other elements were. There were non-elites who had real power. So did the towns. So did merchants. Medieval society was actually very fluid, and that's to say nothing of the role of the church. And in fact, I won't. Not too much more on the real-world Catholic Church, at least, because this seems like a great transition point from the digression on feudalism to a digression on the Church of the Moons in Lindworm. The most illustrious Church of the Moon goddesses venerates, you want to guess, the 2 moons of Lindworm as representations of their eternal divines. The first is Silas, the white moon, the mother of breath, the creator of life. She blesses the crops and the rains. She welcomes souls into her bosom upon death. Silas is sublime. And to those enemies who deserve a swift death, there's Losna, the red moon. She plucks the wicked from the world and brings them to eternal torment. Losna is lethal. These goddesses manifest through magic. Magic in Lindworm is dangerous because serious use taints the body. The priestesses of Silas and Losna believe that they can use it responsibly, carefully, and if they should taint themselves through its abuse, they cloister themselves away from the world to pray the sin away. The people believe that to be born in feudom is to be chosen by the goddesses. Their miracles are not superstition, they're real. Crops rise when Silas smiles. Plague and fog will part when her priestesses chant. And when Losna turns her gaze, people burn. There are variations of these goddesses in several other cultures, including the popular moon cult in the hegemony. There too, they have valuable roles in the cycles of life. In feudom, much like medieval Europe, we can imagine that the church is not some adjacent organization. It's the soul, the center of daily life. Seasons and agricultural festivals rely on observations of the moons. Nightly oaths bind warriors to the moon goddesses above all else. Healing, purification, and burial is all under the auspices of the priestesses. There's no church intruding on the lives of the locals. The church is the lives of the people of Feudom. Speaking of, the lives of their clergy are also stratified. The bulk of the clergy live in the various orders. First and foremost are the women who belong to the Order of Sacred Priestesses of Silas, led by Verena of Outgard. They are mystics, healers, and confessors. These women are seen as incorruptible, and Verena protects them dearly. She is the granddaughter of Maxence of Outgard, the Duke of Aurora, which means that she feels comfortable speaking out about anything she sees as corrupt or immoral, even when it comes from inside the church. The people love and respect their priestesses, and they're generally seen as incorruptible. They're responsible for many of life's little daily rituals, for example, the sanctification of grave robbery, like the sanctification of cemeteries. This is done every season to keep away grave robbers, keep the undead at bay, and so on. When desecrations do occur, a 3-day-long ceremony presided over by the Sempiternus himself is held in collaboration with the Knights of Lozna to patrol and verify the state of the dead. The Order of Silas, you see, are guardians as well as clergy. They protect the relics of the moon goddesses in the Palace of the High Priestess, where all other sacred artifacts are brought. Neophytes to the church undergo rigorous training in monasteries before being ordained as full priestesses. After 10 years of long service, they can become instructors, that is, teachers who share their knowledge of rituals, magic, and resisting the fog. Alternatively, they can become inquisitors. These women are fearsome interrogators and exacting investigators. Morgane of Geoffrey is their best-known inquisitor. None of our fathers died in their beds. That's what they say in the Order of Knights of Lozna. This is the military order. This is the military order. Yes, just like those military orders. They are dedicated to defending the sacred places, protecting the populace from cursed creatures and heretical hellions, and enforcing the laws of the church. Led by Grand Magister Pierre Besson, they have a grand legacy and history working alongside their counterparts in the priestesshood, even if their current leader, Grand Magister Besson, really wants to lead both orders. The knights take oaths to defend the innocent, to spread justice, loyalty, and they'll never hesitate to die for the word of the moon goddesses. Breaking such an oath would lead to shame, dishonor, and excommunication, which, remember, is a horrible sentence. It means you get excluded from much of daily life. You can't go to the weekly meetups. You can't go to the board game nights. Yes, this is strict, but the knights see this as a necessity. Only if you have complete trust that your brethren will be loyal and true can you do what is needed. One of the tasks of the knights is to find artifacts and relics. But they don't study them, they only hold on to the tears of the goddess and the onyx box. One of Feudom's most interesting yet least discussed features is that their home island of Gaiasael is just absolutely stuffed with magical treasure. Relics of the old Elven Empire are popping out like dandelions. The constant proximity to ancient magic can have interesting effects on humans. For example, Knights of the Sacred Relic are a band tasked with guarding the Tears of Lozna on the island of Valinet in the Duchy of Aurora. Proximity to this relic has made its guardians bigger, stronger, more magically potent, and with a longer name. High Priestess Verena has a long and deep relationship with them, as Aurora is her grandfather's dukedom, and frequently requests their support when going on expeditions. There are many strictures for these knights, and they're seen as signs of respect to the goddesses. Long hair and beards are prohibited, as are some dirty hobbies like hunting. The knights are constantly sent on faraway missions, as one of their chief duties is finding and securing those ancient relics. Their other duties include stamping out superstitious pagan religions, including the horribly inspired artistes of the signs of Yaldabaoth. Policing is generally given over to the secular military orders of the kingdom. But when those nasty pagans and heretics are found, they get arrested and brought to the Big Papa, the Pope equivalent, the Sempiternus. Speaking of, Sempiternus in Latin just means everlasting and eternal. The Sempiternus is above both orders. This is the supreme representative of the Church of the Moon and holds the highest religious authority in Feudom. The Sempiternus is responsible for proclaiming armed pilgrimages, ensuring divine justice, interpreting and upholding church doctrine, promoting unity, and working alongside the king. The current Sempiternus is actually a bit of a reformer, if you consider shattering of old norms to be reform. He's austere, thorough, and conciliatory, but he becomes more devious with each passing day. He created his own personal elite guard, the Mace Escorts, also known as the Bloodless. They fight dirty with their big maces, they hate elves, and they're quite dangerous. Their numbers even have a sort of secret service, the Stygians. Stygians. This comes from an astrological term for when three or more objects align. Stygians were poor children raised from a young age and given endless comforts in exchange for endless loyalty. The Stygians are sent on secret missions, and they're refined and cultural sorts when they're not using the absolute utmost of discretion on those black ops for the Sempiternus. There are only ever 3 Stygians, with one always kept in reserve. If there ever comes a day when all 3 are called on at once, it means the Sempiternus is making a move for a checkmate. The Sempiternus is up to some wild stuff. He's been selling dispensations for acquittals, letting individuals pay off their debts and avoid excommunication. The Camerlengo, a real title, referring to a member of the real-world papacy who's in charge of dealing with finances, is Gadriel, and Gadriel sees many petitioners as long as they can pay. He even wants to have more influence on the kingdom's policy. The Sempiternus asked for a seat on the Council of Peers, giving him the same rights to vote for the king as all the other dukes. Grand Magister Pierre Besson has loyalty to the current big guy, which puts him at odds with Verina's disciplined approach to the faith, especially regarding collateral damage on expeditions. Time will tell if the deep-seated political order is able to resist old Sempi's new power plays. Oh my god, my recording room is so hot. Oh my god, it's so hot. It's so hot.
And you know what? I think that's a fine place to call it for now, because we will return to the lands of Feudom when it's a little bit cooler and I can tape better. And yeah, I'm going to call it there. I want to thank all the patrons very much. I want to thank any new subscribers who've come because they're interested in Warcrow. And I want to say that I'm really getting back into making videos. Thank you for everything, and I will see you guys soon.